Imagine a world where every move you make, every word you utter, is under constant surveillance. A world where privacy is a forgotten concept and personal freedom is traded for the illusion of security. This is not a description of a new blockbuster thriller, but the dystopian society meticulously crafted in George Orwell's seminal novel, 1984. Orwell's 1984 introduces us to a world under the watchful eyes of Big Brother, an omnipresent entity symbolizing the state's unending surveillance. Citizens are constantly monitored through telescreens, devices that allow the state to keep an eye on every action, every word, and even every facial expression of its people. This constant surveillance is a tool for control, a means to suppress dissent and ensure absolute conformity to the dictates of the state. Now let's transition from the pages of this dystopian novel to the reality of modern-day China, a country where the concept of surveillance has been taken to an unprecedented level. In China today, the watchful eye of the state is everywhere. Surveillance cameras are ubiquitous, found on every street corner, in every public space, even within private homes. This is not just about crime prevention or public safety. This comprehensive surveillance network serves a more insidious purpose: to closely monitor the actions of citizens, to control their behavior, and to suppress any form of dissent. There's a chilling parallel here. The omnipresent surveillance in Orwell's 1984 and the all-seeing eye of the Chinese state are eerily similar. Both serve the same purpose: to control and to suppress, to create a society where the state is omnipotent and the individual is powerless. The dystopian world of 1984 is not a distant reality anymore. It's happening right now in modern-day China, and this is just the beginning. The question we must ask ourselves is, can we afford to ignore these parallels? Can we afford to ignore the signs that point to a future where Orwell's 1984 becomes our reality? In this eerie similarity, we find the first parallel between Orwell's 1984 and modern-day China. In 1984, Orwell introduces the Thought Police, an organization that punishes individuals for so-called thought crimes. These are not crimes of action, but crimes of thought, of belief, of dissent from the party line. Orwell created a world where even the privacy of your own mind is violated, where thinking the wrong thing could lead to your downfall. A nightmare scenario, right? But how far is it from reality? Enter China's social credit system. This system, much like Orwell's Thought Police, monitors and evaluates the behavior of its citizens. But instead of thought crimes, it uses a comprehensive rating system. Every citizen is given a score based on their behavior, from jaywalking to financial solvency to online comments. The higher your score, the more privileges you receive. Easier access to loans, priority job applications, even better matchmaking prospects. But fall below the acceptable line, and you could find yourself restricted, unable to buy plane tickets, or even barred from certain jobs. Now you might argue, isn't this just a more sophisticated version of any law enforcement system? Isn't it just a way to ensure good behavior? But here's the catch: the system also punishes what might be called social thought crimes. Criticizing the government online, that's a deduction. Sharing unauthorized news, another deduction. Step by step, the social credit system shapes and controls not just actions but thoughts and beliefs. In Orwell's 1984, the thought police used surveillance, fear, and punishment to control the minds of the populace. In today's China, the social credit system uses data, algorithms, and societal pressure to shape and guide behavior. While the methods may be different, the goal is the same: control of the individual, not just in action but in thought. The thought police may be fiction, but the social credit system is not. Another haunting parallel between 1984 and today's China. Scene script. Orwell's Newspeak, a language designed to limit free thought, is another chilling aspect of 1984. At the heart of Orwell's dystopian world is a language called Newspeak. It's not just any language, but a carefully crafted tool of control designed to restrict the range of thought by minimizing the complexity of language. The less words you have, the less thoughts you can express. Right? Imagine a world where there are no words for freedom, justice, or even love. In Orwell's 1984, Newspeak is the government's attempt to achieve just that. By reducing the vocabulary and simplifying the grammar, the party seeks to limit the capacity for critical thought and opposition among its citizens. Let's swing our gaze to modern China. You might not see an exact replica of Newspeak, but there is a striking similarity in the control and manipulation of narratives. The Chinese government maintains a tight grip on information flow, regulating media content and censoring online discussions. For instance, the Great Firewall of China, a state-of-the-art internet censorship program, blocks access to a vast number of foreign websites, keeping the Chinese cyberspace under a controlled narrative. Search terms deemed sensitive by the government are scrubbed clean from the internet. The control is so pervasive that certain historical events like the Tiananmen Square protests are virtually non-existent in Chinese digital space. China's state-controlled media outlets, too, play a significant role in shaping public opinion. They're not just reporters of news, but instruments of the state's propaganda machine, disseminating narratives that support the government's policies and ideologies. The lack of independent journalism results in a homogenized narrative, leaving little room for dissent or critical thinking. In both 1984 and modern China, the power to define language and control information is wielded as a tool to shape thought and perception. It's a chilling reminder of how the manipulation of language and information can limit personal freedoms and shape a society's reality. When language and information are controlled, so too are thoughts and perceptions. Yet another parallel between 1984 and modern China. Orwell's Proles, the working class in 1984, live in a state of ignorance, manipulated by the party. In George Orwell's dystopian masterpiece, the Proles, or proletariat, represent the vast majority of the population. They live in poverty, yet they're blissfully unaware of the manipulations of the ruling party. The party keeps them in a constant state of ignorance, feeding them fabricated truths and distractions to keep them complacent. The Proles accept the status quo not because they agree with it, but because they're not presented with any alternatives. The party has so effectively controlled information and narratives that the Proles can't even conceive of a different, freer life. They're manipulated into believing that their lives, as grim as they are the best they could possibly be. Now let's turn our gaze eastward to the most populous nation on Earth, China. A vast number of Chinese citizens, especially those living in rural areas or working in menial jobs, could be compared to Orwell's Proles. They are often unaware of the extent to which their government surveils and controls their lives. The Chinese government, like the party in 1984, employs a sophisticated propaganda machine. It shapes narratives, controls information, and ensures that dissenting voices are silenced. Many Chinese citizens accept this as the norm. They've grown up in a society where surveillance is ubiquitous, where every action can be monitored and every word can be scrutinized. In many cases, they're not even aware of the level of control exerted over their lives. They've been conditioned to see the government's actions as necessary for stability and prosperity. Much like the Proles, they've been manipulated into believing that their lives, as they are the best they could possibly be. The ignorance of the Proles mirrors the situation of many in today's China, furthering the parallels between the book and reality. As we delve deeper into this chilling comparison, we see more clearly how Orwell's 1984 isn't just a work of fiction, but a stark warning of a possible future. As we've seen, the parallels between 1984 and modern China are chilling. We've drawn a line from Orwell's dystopian fiction to the reality of today's China. A line that traces the chilling similarities between the two. We've seen the thought police reincarnated in the form of the social credit system, a digital panopticon that keeps a constant eye on the populace, judging their merits and demerits. We've witnessed Newspeak in the tightly controlled narrative spun by the state, a manipulation of language and information that stifles free thought and dissent. The vast majority, like Orwell's Proles, live their lives within the confines set by the state. Their voices drowned out in the cacophony of state propaganda. They are the wheels that keep the machinery of the state running, their individuality and potential smothered under the weight of the system. But what happens next? What does the future hold if this trend continues unchecked? If we project these trends into the future, we might find ourselves living in a world not unlike that of 1984. A world where every move is monitored, every thought controlled, and every dissent silenced. A world where the state is the ultimate arbiter of truth, and individual freedom is nothing more than a distant memory. But this isn't just about China. The technologies and tactics employed by the Chinese government are being exported to other nations, spreading the seeds of Orwellian control across the globe. If unchecked, this could redefine the very fabric of international relations and global governance. The implications are immense. Freedom, democracy, human rights, the very values that we hold dear, could be under threat. Our future could be one where the global order is defined not by cooperation and mutual respect, but by surveillance and control. We stand at a crossroads. The choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow. Will we choose to stand up to this rising tide of control, or will we let our future slip into the pages of a dystopian novel? Orwell's 1984 may have been a work of fiction, but if we are not vigilant, it could well become our reality.